It's been a few days since I found out the truth, but I swear, every time I think about it, my stomach turns. The worst part, it's not just the betrayal, it's how perfectly everything fell apart in that one moment. I'd always thought I knew my wife, thought I knew everything about her. Turns out I was blind, completely blind. It started with little signs, things I ignored or brushed off because I wanted to believe the best. She'd come home late sometimes, smelling like perfume I didn't recognize, or her phone would buzz late into the night. She'd always come up with some excuse, stress, work, whatever. I'd ask her about the late nights and she'd smile, reassuring me that everything was fine. I bought it. Honestly, how could I not? We'd been together for years and I wasn't the suspicious type. I thought I knew her, or at least I wanted to believe I did. But the moment I saw her at the reception, her in his arms, smiling, laughing, I knew I'd been fooling myself. It was like a punch to the gut. The reception was in full swing, everyone celebrating, and there she was just as I'd feared. I saw her first, then I saw him, my best man, my best friend, the guy I trusted more than anyone else in the world. They looked like they belonged to each other, like they'd planned it all along. They must have known I was just outside the door waiting, oblivious. My palms went slick with sweat. My heart pounded so loud I thought everyone could hear it. My legs felt heavy, like I'd been punched in the stomach. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My wife, the woman I was supposed to marry in hours, was in his arms, kissing him as if she couldn't get enough. And he was smiling like he'd just won the lottery. I didn't plan to confront them right then. I just stood there, frozen, trying to process what I'd seen. But the evidence was right there. Her dress slightly wrinkled from the embrace, lipstick smudged on his collar, 2 glasses of champagne abandoned on the table. I saw the tiny, almost invisible lipstick stain on her neck, and that's when my stomach clenched. How long had this been going on? Weeks? Months? I'd been so blinded by love I missed all the signs. When I finally caught her eye across the room, she froze. Her face went pale, then flushed with that same guilty red I'd seen in movies. I wanted to scream, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I just turned and walked out of there, clutching the doorframe to steady myself. I could hear her calling after me, muffled through the noise, "Wait, please, it's not what you think." But I didn't stop. I couldn't. As I stepped outside, the cold air hit my face, sharp and unforgiving. My hands trembled. I clutched my phone, not even knowing what I'd do with it. Just knowing I had to get away from the scene was enough to make my stomach turn again. I barely made it to the car before I broke down, fists pounding against the steering wheel, feeling the betrayal like a fresh wound. How long had she been lying? Why? How could she do this? And worse, what am I supposed to do now? It's only been a few days, but it feels like I've been punched repeatedly in the chest. I keep replaying everything. The look in her eyes, the way her voice sounded when she denied everything. At first, acting all innocent. I want revenge. I want her to feel what I felt when I saw her in his arms, helpless, furious, betrayed. I know this isn't the end. I have plans brewing. I've been gathering evidence, digging into her phone, her emails. I want to make her regret every lie, every stolen moment. She destroyed everything we built. And I swear she's going to pay. I just don't know how yet, but I will. If you've ever been in this hell, you know that the worst part isn't just that she cheated, that's bad enough. It's how she did it, how she lied for months, and how she thought she could get away with it. Well, she's wrong. I'm done playing the fool. I'll show her what real heartbreak looks like. And she'll regret this for the rest of her damn life. Now I need a plan, and I'll make sure she gets what she deserves. The next few days were a blur of restless nights and adrenaline-fueled mornings. I couldn't keep from replaying that scene over and over. The look in her eyes when she saw me walk out, like she knew she'd screwed everything up but was too damn scared to admit it. Honestly, I'd never felt so furious and helpless all at once. But beneath that rage, I realized I had to be smart. Revenge isn't just about acting on impulse. It's about making her feel the consequences of her lies. I started digging into her phone, her emails, anything I could get my hands on. I didn't want just quick revenge. I wanted her to suffer the way she'd made me suffer. I needed proof that she'd been lying for months, that she'd been sneaking around behind my back. I knew she'd deny everything at first, so I had to be careful. No rushing, no sloppy mistakes. The first thing I found was some secret text exchanges. Nothing explicit, but enough to tell me she'd been seeing him for weeks. They'd been planning this, I was sure. She sent him messages late at night, calling him my secret, and he'd replied with the kind of messages that make your stomach churn. Can't wait to see you tonight, one read. Another, you're the only one who truly gets me. That's when I realized this wasn't some drunken fling. This was deliberate. They'd built this in secret behind my back. What really got to me was a series of photos she'd sent him, pics of her in her pajamas, her hair messy, with a caption, "Wish you were here." I looked at those images and felt my fists clench. She'd been lying about everything, even to her own friends probably. I kept scrolling and I found a few receipts from the hotel she booked with her name and his. I printed everything. I wanted proof, undeniable proof, to make her face the truth. I also checked her social media. Nothing suspicious yet. She'd been good at covering her tracks, but I knew her passwords and her routines. I was patient. I knew I'd catch her in a lie if I stayed vigilant. This was war, and I was determined to win. One day I confronted her about her phone. She was surprised, caught off guard, but she put on that fake innocent act like she hadn't been caught. "What are you doing snooping around?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Don't lie to me," I said coldly. "I've seen the messages, I've got the evidence. You've been lying for months." Her face went pale again, but then she smiled. A sick, knowing smile. "It's not what you think," she said softly. "You're overreacting, it's just a mistake, it's nothing." "No," I said, voice rising. "It's everything. You're a liar and you've been cheating on me with my best man. How could you do this to me?" She looked away, silent. That silence told me everything I needed to know. She was guilty as hell, and that's when I realized I had to act fast. I wasn't just going to walk away and forget about this. I'd been betrayed in the worst way, publicly, painfully, and with the one person I trusted the most. She destroyed our relationship, and I'd make damn sure she paid. I started drafting a plan. Not the kind where I run and scream or do something stupid. No, this had to be calculated, precise. I wanted her to feel exposed, vulnerable, and powerless. I wanted her to realize that her lies had consequences, and I was the one holding the hammer. So I set up a few more things. Hidden cameras I'd placed in key spots, some fake accounts I'd created to bait her into slipping up further. I wanted her to think she was still getting away with it, but really I was just waiting for the perfect moment. Patience was key. I'd be relentless, and I'd make her regret ever crossing me this way. Every step I took brought me closer to the day I'd confront her with everything. Her face when she finally realized I knew, that alone would be priceless. I wasn't just after revenge anymore. I wanted closure. I wanted her to understand the pain she'd caused. And I'd make sure she paid in a way she'd never forget. But right now, all I could do was sit back, watch, and prepare. I knew she thought she was clever, that she'd hide her lies forever. That's what made this so satisfying. I'd caught her, and she didn't even know it. Whatever she was planning next, I was ready for her. And when the time came, I'd make sure she understood exactly how badly she'd screwed up. The waiting game was the hardest part. Every day, I'd wake up with a knot in my stomach, knowing she was out there, still lying, still pretending everything was normal. I kept my phone close, checking for any new messages or slips-up. My mind kept circling around what I'd say, how I'd catch her off guard, and what kind of reaction I'd get when I finally laid it all out. I didn't want her to see me coming. I wanted her to feel safe, comfortable, and then, bam, that's when I'd strike. I'd planned this carefully. I knew she'd try to deny, to lie her way out of it, so I needed to be prepared with undeniable proof. I've been collecting everything, screenshots, receipts, recordings, just in case. One evening, I got the call I'd been waiting for. It was from a private investigator I hired. He'd been tailing her, watching her routine, capturing her with him, even catching her sneaking out of a hotel late at night. The footage was crystal clear. I watched her kiss him goodbye in the parking lot, her face flushed, eyes shining. The video was my ultimate weapon. I took a deep breath, feeling the cold weight of it in my hand. This was real, and I was finally ready. That night I sat her down. She was surprised but tried to keep her composure. "What's going on?" she asked, voice a little shaky. "I've seen your messages," I told her, laying the phone on the table. "I've seen the videos, the receipts. You lied to me for months." Her eyes flicked away, but her hands clenched tightly in her lap. "It was just a mistake," she murmured. "It doesn't mean anything, I swear I love you," I cut her off. "Love? You think you can just say that and everything's forgiven? You're caught and you know it. I've got everything you ever tried to hide from me." She looked like she was about to cry, but that only made me angrier. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done, not just in words but in action, because I wasn't the type to let this slide, not anymore. "So what's your plan now?" she asked, voice trembling. I leaned in close. "You're going to pack your bags, you're leaving tonight, and I'm going to make sure you never forget what you've done." Her face twisted with shock. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," I said. "You lied to my face for months. You betrayed me with my best man. There's no coming back. From this, I want to see you walk out that door knowing I've finally taken control." She hesitated for a moment, then slowly nodded. "Fine, I'll leave." That's when I knew I was finally taking matters into my own hands. No more games, no more pretending everything was okay. I'd set my plan in motion. I watched her gather her things, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and emptiness. Part of me wanted to break down and cry. I was furious, betrayed, humiliated. But I also felt a strange clarity. I handed her the keys to her car. "Here," I said, voice cold and steady. "Go wherever you want, just know that this is the end of it for good." She looked at me, tears brimming, and said, "I'm sorry." It was the first honest thing she'd said in a long time, but it didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that I was finally in control. I watched her drive away, feeling a strange sense of victory mixed with the bitter taste of loss. That night I sat alone in the silence of an empty house, feeling the weight of everything I'd just done. I was proud, not really, but I knew I'd done the right thing. The betrayal had broken me, but it also gave me clarity. I realized that this wasn't just about revenge, it was about reclaiming my life, my peace. And I knew deep down I'd never let someone tear me apart like that again, not without paying the price. Next, I'll tell you what happened after she left and how I finally started to move on. The house felt so empty after she left. It was like everything that once made me feel safe and secure had been ripped out from under my feet. Silence was the new soundtrack. No more footsteps, no laughing, no whispered secrets late at night. Just the echo of her voice, the scent of her perfume lingering in the air, and the cold reality that I'd been blind for so long. I sat on the couch that night, staring at the empty doorway where she'd just been, feeling the adrenaline crash into me like a tidal wave. My hands trembled as I clutched the remote, flipping through channels in a daze. I kept replaying that moment when I handed her the keys, when she looked at me with tears in her eyes, saying she was sorry. Sorry doesn't cut it. Sorry doesn't fix the betrayal. I knew I had to do something about all this, something more than just cutting ties. I wanted her to feel the pain she'd given me, to understand what she'd lost. My mind raced through the plan I'd carefully crafted. It wasn't about petty revenge. This was about making her understand she'd lost the best thing in her life, and I was damn sure going to make her regret it. The first step was to make sure her reputation was as ruined as her lies. I contacted a friend who worked in the local newspaper. I explained everything, her secret affair, the hotel receipts, the photos, and asked him to keep it in mind. I told him I didn't want to come off as just vengeful, but I wanted her to see that her actions had consequences. Honestly, I didn't want her to get away with it, not without paying a price. Meanwhile, I kept the evidence I'd collected close. I didn't erase anything. I knew she'd try to spin things, deny everything, or worse, try to come back and manipulate me again. But I was ready. I'd made copies. I wanted her to realize I wasn't just some fool who got played. I'd fight back, and I'd do it smart. That night as I sat alone, I realized how much this had changed me. I used to think I was strong, confident, someone who could handle anything. Turns out I'd been blind to the lies right in front of my face. But now I felt different, sharper, more determined. She'd taken a part of me I'd never get back, but I'd rebuild, stronger, smarter. Following days, I started moving on in my own way. I went out with friends, did things I'd always wanted to do but never had the guts to try. I kept busy, distracted, but always with that dark thought simmering in the back of my mind. I wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. One afternoon, I emailed her a message, just a simple line. "Don't bother trying to contact me. I've given you enough chances. The door is closed." That felt good, like closing a chapter I never wanted to reopen. But I knew I had one final thing to do, something that would truly make her see just how badly she'd screwed up. I started planning a way to confront her face to face, to lay everything bare. I wanted her to know that I wasn't just punishing her out of anger. I was doing it because she'd shattered my trust, my world, and I wouldn't let her get away with it. I was ready to make her understand what her betrayal had cost me, and I was ready to walk away, knowing I'd left her with a scar that wouldn't heal. That's what revenge was about, making someone realize what they lost, not just in words but in their own reflection. Next, I'll tell you how I finally confronted her, what I revealed, and how I knew I'd finally crossed the line into true closure. The day I decided to confront her face to face, I felt my stomach tighten like a steel trap. I'd spent days planning how I'd lay everything out, proof, words, the raw truth. I didn't want to just yell or accuse. I needed her to see the damage she'd done, to understand it wasn't just about her cheating, but about everything she'd lied about, everything she'd stolen from me. I met her at a nearby coffee shop. The place was quiet, a little rundown but familiar. My palms were sweaty and my heartbeat was loud in my ears. I saw her sitting there, nervously tapping her foot, clutching her purse like it was some lifeline. When she saw me, her face went pale, but she tried to put on that fake smile. "Why are you here?" she asked, voice trembling. "I have something to show you," I said, pulling out my phone. I pressed play on the videos I'd saved, her kissing him, sneaking out of that hotel. The proof hit her like a punch to the stomach. Her face froze, then slowly turned beet red. She couldn't even deny it anymore. "Is this real?" she whispered, voice cracking. "Too real," I said. "You've been lying to me for months. You betrayed me with my best man. All those nights you said you were working late, you were with him, and I found the messages, the photos, everything. How could you do this?" She looked down, tears welling up, but her voice was quiet. "I didn't mean for it to happen. It just did. I was so lonely." That's when I felt my jaw tight. "Lonely, that's your excuse. You think I'm stupid. You lied, you cheated, and you kept it going while I was clueless. You played me like a fool." She tried to speak, but I cut her off. "You're not the victim here. You're the one who ruined everything. I gave you my trust and you threw it away. So don't come crying now." She looked like she was about to break down, but I was past the point of sympathy. I'd held my anger in for too long. Now it was time she saw what she'd lost. "Going to leave," I said firmly. "And don't bother trying to contact me again. I want you out of my life for good." Her eyes filled with tears and she nodded slowly. "I'm sorry," she finally whispered. "Sorry doesn't fix this," I shot back, voice sharp. "You lost me the day you decided to lie, cheat, and betray everything we had. Just go." She stood up and left, her shoulders slumped, tears streaming down her face. Watching her walk away, I felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. Part of me was glad it was over. Part of me was devastated that it had come to this. But I knew I'd done what I needed to do. I'd shown her the truth, the real damage her lies caused, and I'd finally taken control. That night I sat alone again, staring at the empty space where she'd been. It was quiet, too quiet, but I felt lighter, free, even. The revenge had been sweet, more than I expected, and I knew I'd finally started healing. Moving forward wouldn't be easy, but at least now I had closure. I'd look back at all those nights of lies and realize I'd taken my power back. No more hiding, no more pretending. She lost the best thing in her life, and I'd made sure she remembered it forever. Next, I'll share my final thoughts, how I closed this chapter, what I learned from all this, and what I'd tell anyone in a similar situation. After she left, I stayed in that empty house for a while, just sitting in silence. The quiet was deafening at first, but slowly it started to feel like a relief. For so long, I'd been living in chaos, distracted, betrayed, trying to piece everything together. Now it was just me, the silence, and the cold clarity of knowing I finally took control. The first thing I did was go to the bank and change all my passwords. I closed her access to my accounts, my phone, everything she could have used to manipulate or invade my privacy again. I also started the process of severing all ties, canceling joint accounts, changing locks, and making sure she couldn't come back pretending like nothing had happened. It was about reclaiming what had been stolen, my trust, my peace, my life. I handed over the keys to the house a few days later. I wanted her gone completely, no lingering attachment, no hooks to pull me back. I signed the paperwork myself, feeling a strange sense of finality as I watched her drive away for the last time. I knew I'd never be the same, but I also knew I wouldn't be a fool again. This experience had opened my eyes more than I ever thought possible. Reflecting on everything, I realized that betrayal is like a punch in the gut, but it's also a wake-up call. I learned that trust is fragile, and when it's broken, you have to decide whether to rebuild or walk away. For me, walking away was the only option. I refused to be with someone who thinks their happiness is worth destroying what we had. Of course, it hurts, still does. I can't lie and say I'm completely over it, but I am healing. Seeing her leave was a symbol of that. It's a reminder that sometimes losing someone is the only way to find yourself again. I've also learned that revenge doesn't have to be messy or destructive. It's about taking control, setting boundaries, and making sure your pain is acknowledged. I didn't do anything drastic or illegal. I simply showed her the truth, took my power back, and walked away with my head held high. To anyone who's been betrayed like this, I'd say, trust yourself. Look for the red flags early, but if you miss them, remember that it's never too late to stand up and take control. The pain will fade, and what's left is a clearer, stronger version of yourself. This experience has changed me. I'm more cautious now, more aware of who I let into my life. And I'm finally ready to move on, better, wiser, and more prepared for whatever comes next. Because at the end of the day, the most important thing is that I walked away from the betrayal knowing I did everything I could, and I refused to let her define me. So, the final lesson. No matter how much it hurts, never forget your worth. Never let someone strip away your dignity or your peace. And always remember you are stronger than you think. Sometimes, the hardest lessons are the ones that teach us how to truly stand tall.